I want to talk about soldering the heated bed. First, let's talk about getting the thermistor onto the heated bed. Notice this little spot in the middle here has looks like three little circles, but it's oops, wrong way. It's actually one of the circles, the top one is a hole. Come on, focus. The top one is a hole for the thermistor to go into, and then the other two are tabs that the wires for the thermistor are going to hold on to. And so just to make it so that there's not so much pressure on the wire, we're going to kind of open this up and make an M shape with the thermistor wires, something like that. Make sure those little wires don't cross each other and keep the insulation on there. But then go ahead and clip the wires about here and here and get a little bit of the end stripped so that you can put it on there. This is just demonstration one, so I don't want to go ahead and strip that, but assume that those are stripped wires there. And so you're going to poke the thermistor itself down in the hole and run the wires past the tabs. That will be stripped wires, and then just get a little bit of Kapton tape and put it over so that it's held in place, not covering up the tabs where you're going to solder, and then solder the little skinny wires that are not touching each other and not crossing onto the tabs for the thermistor. Okay, so all this wire will be cut off. Maybe you want to cut there and there, but then also cut about here because we're going to use this wire. Okay, the rest of the wire is going to go towards the MKS board. Let's get it out here. All right, so assume that you've got that soldered in place, and now we're going to let's look at the pin configuration, what we're supposed to do here for soldering. So this is telling us what we're supposed to do. If you forget, you can always read on your board. Remember that MKS board is a 24-volt system, and so we have these tabs down here, soldering places. And so on tab 2, we're going to put the plus. So put the red wire from that's going over to the control board on the 2 tab, and then on the 3 you're going to put the minus. And then the NTC, remember that stands for negative temperature coefficient. It's talking about the thermistor. So those 2 thermistor wires that we cut off, we're going to strip the wires, and we're going to put those on tabs 4 and 5. So these little tabs here, 4 and 5, are for the thermistor. And so I recommend, if it's a little bit oily, go ahead and clean the tabs with a cleaning wipe. Maybe it has a little alcohol in it so that it gets the oily stuff off. Let's see if it'll zoom a little bit and throw me there. And then I think the best way to get this soldered is to, of course, tin your tip and get your tip cleaned and tinned, and then just put a little solder on the tabs. So tin the tabs themselves so they have a little bit of solder on them before you start. Go back and forth about whether I want to tin the wires. You may try that, or it may be best also just as good to just take the wires, and if you want to, take the wires, put them in their spots, and take a little blue tape, tape them down temporarily. All right. So remember, this is my simulated thermistor. It would be long wires going out from here, but I'm just doing this for simulation for wires that I'm not worried about. And then touch the wire and the tab and the solder all at once, most likely. Add solder if you need to, but then you can just get hopefully get it heated up fairly quickly so you're not overheating anything, and get the wires stuck in place. My solder's melting. So we got the thermistor, my simulated thermistor wires wired onto tabs 4 and 5. All right. So now the part that's a little more challenging is because we have these fatter wires for connecting the heated bed to the MKS board. So let's go ahead and strip these wires, and something like maybe 1/4 of an inch showing. Maybe a little much there, but something along that line. the right hole, right wire size. It makes things easier. All right, so we got our wire stripped, and again, I would kind of string the strands together and get them situated here. So remember, the 2 says plus, and so the red is the plus, black is minus, is ground most of the time. So we're gonna again run these back in towards the board, and so can maybe bend them a little bit down so they kind of have a little bit of pressure when you put them down. Just first off, let's tin the tabs again. So where'd my solder go? Let's tin these big tabs also, heat them up, get some solder on them. It's a little challenging to get things to stick to these tabs. So I found that if there's solder on them that's well adhered before we start, it's easier to get the wires to stick. Let's try that. And my soldering iron has had some rough life, so you want to have probably a pretty hot soldering iron, maybe the fatter solder, to get good adhesion. This is kind of ugly, but we'll see if I can get it to work. Okay, so tinning the tab, getting a good solder connection to the tabs to start with. All right, and then let's get the wire situated, kind of bent down, a little bit of pressure on them in place onto the board. Something along those lines. Tape them down, get the extra wire out of your way. All right, so I just got them taped on there. The 2 is the red, is the plus, and the 3 is the black, is the minus. Okay, after some difficulty with a not hot enough soldering iron, and we're back to trying here. And so in the lab, we'll have some soldering irons that are taped over, and we don't want you to take the tape off to change the temperature setting, but we have some that are hotter ones that have the dial on here. So if there's one with the tape off, that's one that you can increase the heat to the maximum so that you can get a better, more heat onto the heated bed, because the aluminum seems to sink off a lot of the heat and it's really hard to get it heated up. So we'll try again here, clean it off a little bit and tin the tip just a bit. And let's see if we can get this solder to melt. Connect this in. And so it's very bit of a challenge to get enough solder melted, just because the heat goes away quickly. But you want to make a very strong connection. Take it from me, because I had to redo mine a couple of times because this joint came loose. There we go. So it's finally flowing there and connected. So again, I maybe need to tin the strip just a little bit better first. It takes a lot of heat on the plate. Keep the solder flowing. There we go. I think it did. Yes. So cool it off a little bit there. See if it's actually stuck when I take the tape off. Looks like it is. So quite ugly, but it's there.